how do you lead the best possible life as a human, which reduces your karma at the most that you can, so that eventually you can achieve what we call moksha, which is nirvana. Like eventually your soul can be one with the universe. And in that context, in that philosophy, the one tenet that helps you the most in reducing your karma and living the best possible life you can as a human is ahimsa. It is complete nonviolence in your thoughts, in your actions, in your speech, right? So it's not just like violence in the way we think of it, but it's the violence in everything. So it's kind of the philosophy that we were immersed with growing up. Both Shilpi and I come from that culture, but it's in Jain's. As a community, no community is ever perfect, so everybody tries their best, and that's embraced and accepted that everybody tries their best. So there's some that will be able to do even more. There's some Jains that will refuse to walk on grass because they don't want to step on bugs by accident, so they'll take the long way around on the sidewalk, if they can find it, right? So everybody does their best, and here at Luvin Arms, we just felt like this is the one key value that if we can exemplify, if we can help others be inspired to adopt in their life and along with in the journey and be able to evolve that understanding of that value over time, that we will be able to do the most good. It's not just about eating plant-based, it's about the why behind it with this value, that it's you eat plant-based because it is the most ahimsic to your own body, to the planet Earth, as well as to the animals.
Welcome to the Yogi Triathlete Podcast. I'm Jess, and alongside me is BJ, my co-host and partner in life. We started this podcast in 2016 with zero idea of how to be podcast hosts, producers, or researchers. But we started anyway, because the pull to share stories of people looking, finding, and living their purpose overrode the fear. It did not negate the fear. We just moved forward despite. And I found this to be a similar recipe amongst the guests we are blessed to converse with on this show. I found a life that feels purposeful is not about eradicating obstacles or fears. Those two things are very present. But as we follow a deeper calling to move forward despite, the obstacle and fears become the not so troubling norm of a fulfilling life. Purpose comes in unexpected ways, but as I reflect on my own life experience, I see a million moments that led so logically to where I sit today. For our guest, Shaleen Shah, it started many decades ago with a love for horses, a love that eventually led to a rescue of a horse named Haa-lee, which led to another rescue, and then eventually to the creation of Luvin Arms Animal Sanctuary located in Erie, Colorado. To date, Luvin Arms has rescued over 800 animals from circumstances of neglect, abuse, and the systematic terror of animal agriculture. They have exponentially raised awareness amongst humans that animals are individuals with families, emotions, and community needs. They have taught tens of thousands that these sacred beings have the same right that people do, to live a peaceful and loving life in their natural habitats. Steeped in the principle of Ahimsa, Luvin Arms is dedicated towards a life that embraces nonviolence towards all living beings. As stated on their website, they provide exceptional lifelong social, emotional, and cognitive care to rescued farm animals and advocate for those who have not been rescued by sharing their residents' stories to inspire, educate, and empower others to embrace a more compassionate and sustainable lifestyle. Shaleen and his wife Shilpi founded Luvin Arms in 2015 with zero idea of how to build a sanctuary. They faced an extraordinary task ahead, but could not deny the circumstances that unfolded or the knowing that the universe was asking them to step into a completely new purpose in life. So with a deep calling on their hearts, 2 young children, and a mountain of obstacles ahead of them, they went for it. We are so grateful for the conversation that is about to unfold. My heart has been touched deeply in my research leading into this show, and I have shed a few tears along the way. Shaleen Shah, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Wonderful to connect with you here, Jesse and BJ.
I want to give a shout out to a friend of ours, a dear friend of ours who lives in Boulder, Shelby. She's more of a sister than a friend. And I believe years back she was inspired by an interview that we did with Jean Bauer from Farm Sanctuary and really just sparked the curiosity. And of course, we've since stayed with her and visited with her and you know, cooked dinner and cooked vegan. And her and her son have come out to Loving Arms. It has impacted their lives significantly. I believe that they've done some volunteering out there as well. And she is the one that led us to you. So I'm just so grateful. The trickle effect is so powerful. Would you agree?
Yes, I completely agree. Wow. Well, thank you, Shelby.
Yeah. And so I'll be out there actually for the Thanksgiving holiday. So I would also love to come out for a visit and see the property.
Please do.
So tell us, what's going on the sanctuary grounds today? Anything? Anybody having extra fun today, or what does a day in the life of a farm sanctuary look like?
I think that's the one thing that we are always just energized by is all the new things that are always happening at a sanctuary. I don't think any one day can be the same as another. It's because we have so many individual lives unfolding and on a day-to-day basis that brings about, it's just unique every day. So it's a lot of great things happening. We actually have our gala on Saturday. It's our 7th annual gala is coming up. So very busy, a lot of activity happening to prepare for that. This is the first year that we'll actually have it at the sanctuary. So very excited to host people for this event. But also just a lot of great things happening for some of our the residents. Many are in good health, and some of the ones that we are caring for, they continue to thrive and do well. But all good things.
How is how many people are you looking to host this weekend for the gala?
We've sold out on 200 tickets, and so we'll be hosting at least 200 plus, a few vendors and volunteers who are helping that day.
Oh my gosh! And how has that grown over the years?
I think our first gala was about 130 people, so it's grown certainly. So it's great to once a year kind of come together and celebrate the work that's done at the sanctuary. So the gala is always a great highlight.
What kind of interest do you get from these events? Do you get people that are they most often they've already been there, or is this their first experience?
Yeah, amazingly, I think that for our first few galas was mostly people that were close-knit community, volunteers and donors are more close-knit and had been to the sanctuary multiple times. But lately, the past couple of years, it seems that we get donors who have followed the story of Luvin Arms, but have not actually been to Luvin Arms, but they come to the gala and are inspired to give. So it's there's something somehow it attracts a different group of individuals than only of course our community and our volunteers do still come, but it also brings people who normally don't come to the sanctuary.
It's that universal draw or momentum or energetic. Right. Feel or pull that is something that you're creating in Erie, Colorado. I think that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, thank you. We feel the blessings every day for what Luvin Arms has grown to be.
So let's go back before you were feeling the blessings of what Loving Arms has grown to be, and you were feeling the blessings and the calling of the creation of the sanctuary. And, take us through the story, because you didn't grow up on a farm, like you didn't grow up caring for animals. You weren't a veterinarian. In fact, I believe you were in tech.
No.
So, which is very different when you have, a cow with an infected udder, or a chicken, with an infection, or things like that. So, I mean, none of this added up on paper, yet here you are. So we'd love to hear the story, all the way going back to what brought you to, an animal-free, dairy-free life.
Yeah. So when our first son was born about 11 years ago, when my wife Shilpi would nurse him, he would immediately throw up and had very bad reactions. And he was not thriving, wasn't putting on weight. So we went to go see our pediatrician, and luckily we had a more holistically minded pediatrician who recommended an elimination diet to Shilpi. And the very first thing on the list on that diet was to remove dairy from her diet. So, she said, okay, well, if this will help Arav, let me give that a try. And she eliminated dairy. It was very difficult for her because multiple times a day she was having a glass of cow's milk, and she just, but she did it, and miraculously, Arav was better within 24 hours, that he was actually able to keep his milk down and was starting to thrive. His eczema cleared up. It just seemed unbelievable to us. She restarted research, okay, wait, why? Isn't milk supposed to be this perfect, healthy food for us? And, we grew up with it all of our life. We've never had issues. So she started researching and then started finding all of these medical scientific recommendations of not why dairy milk is not good for human consumptions, why it's not meant for us, etc. And then digging deeper, she also started finding a lot of the ethical problems with dairy. And the one that she connected with the most is, cows as mothers carry their babies in their stomach for 9 months, similar to humans. But when their baby is born, it's snatched away almost immediately. And, so that humans can take the milk. And she just couldn't get over that fact, connecting with her being a new mom and our baby, and just imagining what a cow mom would go through every time that's done to her. And it's done off, every single year. So she decided right then and there that she's going to go vegan. She was the only one, we didn't know anybody who was vegan at that time, not in our family or friend circle. So she, was kind of a lot to figure out. And it took me another 2 years to go vegan, right? So even though she was inspired to this, frankly, I was addicted to cheese, which there's scientific evidence to link, true addiction to cheese. So it took me another 2 years. And then when my younger son was born, Avi, we've never had pets in our lives. And for some reason, we were getting drawn to animals. And this one time, Shilpi was at a park and saw this man riding around on a horse with a bunch of other kids, and just decided to approach him and start conversation. And then, in a week later, my son Arav and I are out riding with him every week, multiple times a week. And then that leads us to decide that, okay, we'll adopt a horse of our own so that we have our own horse to ride. I used to ride when I was young in India. And then we adopt Haa-lee. and she was the first animal that had ever been part of our family, first pet ever. And for the first time, we started seeing her for who she is as an individual, and started seeing her and her needs and wants instead of just what I wanted from her. And, because I wanted to ride, that was my desire, not necessarily hers. And so then that realization slowly led me to stop riding. And then we decided to rescue other horses because we discovered, how horses are abused in the society. And so we rescued another horse named Niblet, who was just a baby being discarded. And then we heard of another horse and 2 babies that were being sent to this auction, which is called a slaughter auction. That's just the animals are sent there to be discarded, and most often the buyers are from brokers for slaughterhouses. And so we decided to go and try to rescue them. And when we were there, we had to wait 6 hours for those horses to be brought to the auction floor. That's just how many animals were there. And in those 6 hours, we witnessed hundreds and hundreds of other farmed animals of all sorts. Most of them just look like babies. And they were being pulled, kicked, prodded, and pushed onto this auction floor, being sold by the pound. And we could see in their faces their individuality and their fear and their emotions of that place. And it reminded me of just how Haa-lee was as an individual. And it was a really difficult day not being able to rescue others. And we didn't have land of our own. We just had a small suburban home. The horses we were boarding at a boarding facility. And, so once we rescued those horses that we went there to get, on the way to this boarding facility, all I could think of is there were so many others that I wished I could have rescued, but we couldn't. We didn't have land. There was no place for us to put a pig or a goat or a cow, and so that's all we could think of. And, that very evening, out of the blue, somebody called us, said, "Hey, there's 23 acres, 2 miles from your house. That's for lease. Do you know anybody who could use that?" And that just felt like a call from the universe that we had to do this. So that night, Shilpi and I spent half the night just staying up talking about this because, like you said, we have no experience with animals. Even the horses we rescued were being cared for by somebody else at a boarding facility. And we had 2 young boys. My youngest was just 1 and the oldest was just 3. So we were not in our, like somebody would say like, okay, that was, there's no way you should do this. But somehow we couldn't ignore the call from the universe. So the next day we signed the lease and Luvin Arms was born. The property was in shambles. There was one old barn that still needed a lot of safety fixes before we could rescue anybody or have any animals there. And we did not have much of a network or group of people here to help us. But somehow, in speaking with a neighbor, somebody posted on Facebook, and lo and behold, like that very next weekend, we had 35 strangers who just came and showed up and stayed all day to help us with fixing up the property, and they kept coming week after week. And through that confidence of community, we decided, no, we can do this. And not only can we do this as a small rescue, but we can really do this as a sanctuary that can make a difference to animals far beyond who we can rescue. So that's the story.
Gosh, that's a story that only the divine would organize. Completely illogical, just sparkled with miracles everywhere.
Yeah.
And, oh, man, the story about that auction is it's just so heavy. It's so hard that you sat there for 6 hours. And just like I've heard you tell the story before as I was listening to other podcasts, and I just was really contemplating that 6 hours of animals being auctioned off to die. And that wasn't the only auction ever to take place. Like there's more than one taking place right now. And oh my gosh, I can't even imagine how heavy your heart was. Here you are with these beautiful sacred beings that you've rescued. And it's like, okay, well, but there was that part that was still very much undone. And there was like there was more there. Could you feel like that there was more coming, or I don't know, like that? How was that ride home? I mean, I know you touched upon it, but
it was rough. Here you have this elation that you've been able to help save 3 lives. And then you have this despair but there were hundreds others just like these 3. They all deserved to be able to live their full life, not just these 3 horses that we rescued. And, so that tears at you, and it just makes you feel very small in the world. Like what I did made no difference except to those 3 individuals that I was able to rescue. And that just, it was extremely emotional, that whole day and that night. And then when you get a phone call like that saying, but wait, your wish can be granted, you just, there's no words to be able to express the emotions that go through you in that moment.
Who took that call that night? Was it you?
Yeah, it was me.
So how did you break the news to Shilpi?
We were talking through the day about just the, that emotional, the tear of what we were seeing. When I told her about this, she herself couldn't believe it. It really felt like a miracle in that moment. That wow, here is an answer. Here is something we can do. If we felt too small and felt like what we did was inadequate, well, here's a way that we can do more. Here's a way that we can help build a world that we want our 2 little boys to grow up in. And here's a way that we can show them that, if there's something wrong in the world, you have the power to work to change it. And, so there was, a lot of great conversations and emotions that we went through in those 24 hours before we signed that lease.
Oh, gosh.
All the fear and doubt too that floods in. So you're acting or moving through your heart, like your heart is pulling you towards this. The mind is probably the one that's, most obviously doubting and having a little bit of fear. But I was just thinking that probably wasn't the biggest fear was not being able to help the rest of at least some more animals, at least.
Yeah, I think, I've been an entrepreneur all my life. So as an entrepreneur, I've just had to figure things out, so that part of, the starting was not as scary, but you're right. Like the scary part was, it was twofold. One, can we really do this in a way that really helps the animals? And 2, what are we getting into and what are we taking away from our 2 boys? Yes, we'll be able to give them this amazing experience to build from and this demonstrated, action that, will empower them to be able to take action in their lives when they feel something is, needs to change in the world. But what are we also taking away from them? Because this was going to be a tremendous personal sacrifice that we're all going to have to make. So, but, somehow it all came through.
There's a beautiful quote from Rumi that just recently came into my life at the perfect time, because it typically does. And it reads, "Be watchful. The grace of God appears suddenly. It comes without warning to an open heart." And that's what I found, is that things will happen in an instant, and you just can't, it's never logical. It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So the other thing that doesn't make sense is like all these people that just kept showing up to help you guys get the structure of this sanctuary together. So who was your first farmed animal rescue? Who was your first resident, or was there more than one that came at once?
Yeah, there's 3 distinct rescues that were all very much together, like within just a few days of each other. So one was 3 chickens that came from a egg-laying facility that were being discarded. One of these volunteers who came, was just happened to know of it and went there and rescued them. 2 of them, passed away, unfortunately, between then and now, but one of them is still with us. And, and then we had a baby goat named Alfie, who's also still with us. He was being discarded from a goat dairy here in Longmont. And then somebody took him from that goat dairy and was going to use him as a lawnmower or a weed killer in their backyard, and then realized that the county wouldn't allow them to keep them there. And then he came to the sanctuary. And then the other was 2 pigs, pig brothers, Franklin and Felix. And oh my gosh, well, each of these rescues taught us so much, but Felix and Franklin taught us the most, I feel. We knew nothing, and we went to go and rescue them. They were rescued from this place in Colorado Springs that is actually a city-run park, and it's ran as a historical park that shows you how life was in the 1800s, and people who worked there dress up like that, etc. And what they did was every spring they would get 2 baby pigs, and they would raise them in the park while people could visit them and see them. And in fall, they would actually slaughter them and process them in front of a paying audience to demonstrate how every body part of a pig was used in the 1800s. It was just inhumane and horrific. But they were rescued because a community came together and petitioned the park and the city to rescue them. But when we went to go and get them, knowing nothing, like I rented a trailer and went down there, and we decided, okay, we'll use pumpkins. The pigs love pumpkins, so we'll use pumpkins and we'll bring them into the trailer, and then all will be fine. So we did. We brought the trailer really close by. We attracted them with pumpkins and got them in the trailers, and then we were just like standing around celebrating, like, oh yeah, we did this. And at that moment, the pigs realized we hadn't closed the trailer. There was nothing keeping them in there. So then they ran out and started running around the property, and we had to chase them for, I think, 2 hours to, it's just like the things you learn. But that was fine because they had such a wonderful adventure. We were just afraid that they would go out to the road where there's traffic. But yeah, gosh, there was so much to learn. And then one of the brothers, Franklin, oh my gosh, like his soul was just absolutely pure. Like, I mean, we have so many stories of people meeting Franklin for the first time, and within 5 minutes, without being told anything, they will get up from meeting him and decide right then and there that they'll never eat ham or pork or bacon again. Like, they're just meeting him, because he was an inspiration for us to know that, like we don't necessarily need to do education at the sanctuary. We don't need to tell people, like, do this or do that, or don't, like it's about helping people connect with these individuals as individuals. And like once people connect with them in that way and realize that they are smart, intelligent, social beings and are all individuals, then like that inspiration comes from that. And that's really what we've tried to do. And Franklin's the one who inspired us to do that from the early rescue.
So with these rescues, some of them are coming from pretty atrocious conditions, and they've been treated poorly, to say the least, neglect. What's the biggest obstacle once it's not like they show up and they go, oh, these humans are great, this place is great. Like they're beings with, nervous systems, and they've been
conditioned.
Yeah, they're in this condition of fear. And so what's the biggest obstacle once you bring them to the sanctuary that you found?
Yeah, no, I think you've said it well, that it's the time and patience and love that each of these rescues need to be able to trust humans again. And and each of them are different. Some of them are much ready to forgive and be loved and love others much more readily, and then others, it take years. There's a donkey family that we rescued, and the previous owner was just there's this connotation that donkeys are stubborn, but it's a very different fight or flight reflex that donkeys have, and they're super smart, but they stand their ground. And I think the previous owner would beat them with the halter, and their hooves had overgrown and were like curled back, that nobody could take care of their hooves either. So it took us, slowly, gosh, I think over a year to get them to really trust us. And now, that's the default. But there is a cow that's been with us for 4 years, and the previous life, we don't know what he suffered, and he still has a very hard time trusting people. But we're working with that, and we've gotten to a point where we can caress his face, but still be able to be ready to give him space when he needs it. So it's different for each one, but that's really, I think, the most challenging work, is getting them to know that they're safe and to trust.
And I think it's interesting that they're individuals, right? It's not like, oh, cows trust and pigs don't, and chickens take 6 months, and like we want to quantify it into breeds and make it simple and who's going to be easier to trust and not trust. And the thing is that they're individuals, and they have a purpose on this earth. And so, man, it's when you bring these animals in. So I know that Loving Arms is committed to Ahimsa. And so the first thing we think about is how you're treating these animals, right? Kindness and patience and love, safety, all of those things are first and foremost. How do you reconcile in your own heart the people who have, these animals have been the property of, or I don't love this word, but like the victims of, because they are also beings, right? Yeah. And so nonviolence to all beings. It's something that, I know BJ and I work with a lot as well. It's really, really hard to in a world where so few will pray for those souls or wish them, awakening or light or peace in their life. How do you reconcile it, and how does that trickle down to your volunteers?
Yeah, I feel that Luvin Arms has always been a place that leads by example, and that includes just how Shilpi and I show up as well. And, whenever we reflect on how we as individuals come to be where we are, whatever our individual philosophies are, and let's say Ahimsa is that philosophy, then how we get there, we have to, if you look back, you'll think about like it took a lifetime, maybe even generations to help you arrive where you are. But that was your path. It doesn't have to be, like that same path may not have been available to everybody else. So it's their generations or their whole lifetime to where they are today is what makes them who they are. And so when you think of it from that perspective, you can only provide compassion from there. We can't expect everybody to be the same. I think, like you said, it's nonviolence to all beings, not just animals. So that includes the humans that may not have known better to how to care for the individuals in their lives. So we absolutely lend them the same compassion.
And you can't give away what you don't have. So if you don't have compassion, if you don't have that grace for yourself, it's really, really tough to place that on others. Do you have volunteers that you sort of help move through that process? Like they're there because, let's face it, maybe they're angry and they want to, help the animals, but maybe there's a process to sort of begin to maybe shine a new perspective?
I hope so. I think, we are always very open and very inclusive to all volunteers and visitors. There's no, well, you have to be this way to volunteer with us. But, so we get volunteers from all sorts, and we have stories from, so many volunteers of their transition, their inspiration, and their transformation. We have volunteers who come to do community service hours that were court ordered, and they think that coming to a sanctuary like ours will be interesting, fun. They'll be outdoors, and they'll see some cute animals. Like that's why they come, right? There's no other thought process behind that. But when they come, they are immersed in this environment that kind of is just a very different. They end up seeing, well, this isn't like any other farm that I've ever been to, or this isn't how pigs have been kept in other places, and it just happens that you spend enough time in a place like that, and you can't help but be touched and to really think about your own choices and your own history and your own actions. So yeah, absolutely. There's lots of stories of transformation like that.
It's good self-reflection moments. It's like the animals are the mirror, basically, or that experience is a mirror to kind of see what's going on inside of you. So it's actually an amazing growth opportunity you're providing for these people, these volunteers that are coming. Yeah.
I'm thinking about like Franklin, right? You were saying like he's so pure. And that just shows us the purity. It brings out the purity within us. We think a sunset makes us feel peaceful, but the sunset is showing us that we actually have peace within us that will arise in the right circumstances. Loving Arms aside, you've also created this unbelievable resource for people, opensanctuary.org.
Yeah.
Will you tell us about the inspiration for that and what it is?
Sure. Yeah. So, as I've shared, we knew nothing about how to start a sanctuary, how to, I could barely swing a hammer. So I couldn't fix or build buildings for, the animals that we rescue. And in that process, you think, okay, well, this is, like the modern century, we'll just Google everything. But what you quickly realized when you do is that all of the information that you found was how to farm these animals, not how to care for them for their life to the fullest. So we found information on, well, what do you feed a pig? And you'd find all this information on, food to fatten them up, and for them to only live for 9 months of their age, for their life, and because that's the age that they're slaughtered. But you found very little information for the types of diseases that they get as they live beyond those years. So it just felt like there was not enough information out there, and that if we're feeling this, then there's so many other people out there who either have a sanctuary or want to have a sanctuary, or just fall in love with an individual farmed animal and want to care for them for their whole life. Then how do they do the same? And so that's the inspiration behind Open Sanctuary, is that we wanted to provide that information openly from the perspective of compassion for the animals first and foremost. And we're very blessed to be able to find somebody who could help us lead that project. So Z came on very early on with Open Sanctuary and took that vision and implemented it in this amazing, beautiful way. And we now have 5 team members at Open Sanctuary, and they have hundreds. I think we're close to about 600 resources now, all about how to create or run or grow a farm animal sanctuary of any size, and how best to care for individual farm species. I think we were the first, Google, resource on the internet of how to do a health check for a turkey or a pig. Like the things that just didn't exist, because most people don't raise those animals for full life and for like a compassionate perspective. So,
and a lot of these animals that are coming to you, I would assume, are sick, or they really need care. And what do you think, based on your experience? We see a lot of grass-fed, hormone-free, antibiotic-free, all of that stuff. Which Beej and I were under that blindfold too. We thought it was better. What is you think the biggest misconception when it comes to that, as far as like to the detriment of the animal?
Yeah. So there was this one rescue we went to. It was a antibiotic-free kind of humane chicken farm for chickens raised for meat. And it was here in Colorado, but they were going bankrupt, didn't have money to feed the birds or money to heat the barns in the middle of winter. So there were these 30,000 birds that were slowly dying in their buildings. And so when we went there to rescue, we saw firsthand what antibiotic-free meant, because it doesn't mean that they're not confined. It doesn't mean that they're not raised by the tens of thousands. But what antibiotic-free meant is that these birds did not have the antibiotics that they needed to fight off the diseases that was rampant in those buildings. So these birds were incredibly diseased. I mean, they were just weeks old, and they had the most horrific diseases, and they did not have the antibiotics that they needed to fight those. So the reason why antibiotics are given to farmed animals in such high quantities is because they're packed in. Like, we went through the experience of the pandemic. We know how quickly diseases spread, right? So when these animals are packed in miserable conditions, they have terrible health, they're being, thought of as commodities, only, fed the worst kinds of food to fatten them up, they are very susceptible to disease. And so antibiotics are fed to them to stave off that disease, so then they can grow fat enough to be slaughtered. So it's a profit and loss calculation for the industry. But without that, the animals suffer dearly in the same conditions. That's not to say there are some small farms where they're actually outdoors and, raised in these conditions that may, in their own, in that little window, seems like, oh, well, that's very nice and humane. But when you actually extrapolate that and think of it in a larger global perspective, you quickly realize that it is highly unsustainable, because raising farm animals there's just too many people who want to eat meat for all animals to actually be raised in that way. And even if they were, that aside from the ethical arguments of what happens to those animals in the end, anyways. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's intense.
Yeah.
Never heard that part of it. Never even considered it. Right. It's like how much we just buy into what's on a package, and it's better. That veil is, hopefully it's thinning for some that are tuning into this podcast. So Ahimsa, right? Ahimsa, here we go. You were born into a life of Ahimsa, and I know we're getting ready to wrap it up. I want to respect your time as I know you have an appointment to get to. But can you tell us a little bit about that? You were born into this, and what did that look like growing up?
Sure. So we were born into a faith called Jainism. And it's hard to say that it's a religion, because there isn't like a deity that it's more of a philosophy of life. Like, how do you lead the best possible life as a human, which reduces your karma at the most that you can, so that eventually you can achieve what we call moksha, which is nirvana. Eventually your soul can be one with the universe. And in that context, in that philosophy, the one tenet that helps you the most in reducing your karma and living the best possible life you can as a human is ahimsa. It is complete nonviolence in your thoughts, in your actions, in your speech, right? So it's not just like violence in the way we think of it, but it's the violence in everything. So it's kind of the philosophy that we were immersed with growing up. Both Shilpi and I come from that culture, and it's in Jains, as a community, no community is ever perfect. So everybody tries their best, and that's embraced and accepted that, everybody tries their best. So there's some that will be able to do even more. There's some Jains that will refuse to walk on grass because they don't want to step on bugs by accident, so they'll take the long way around on the sidewalk, if they can find it, right? So everybody does their best, and here at Luvin Arms, we just felt like this is the one key value that if we can exemplify, if we can help others be inspired to adopt in their life and along with in the journey, and be able to evolve that understanding of that value over time, that we will be able to do the most good. It's not just about eating plant-based, it's about the why behind it with this value, that it's, you eat plant-based because it is the most ahimsic to your own body, to the planet Earth, as well as to the animals. That then can evolve to an ethical standpoint and, become vegan, right? Like, vegan is an ethical standpoint. It's not a diet. So the diet, right, can evolve into that once you live through those values.
That is powerful. I'm thinking about so many ways that we can expand, right? Because we want to, I feel as a culture, it's an easy thing to say, like, I'm just going to eat plant-based and then I'm good. But there's a lot more depth to ahimsa in non-harming ourselves and others, in thoughts and intentions and words and all of that. So it's taking it to that next level, taking it deeper and deeper. And I love that you mentioned being your best, like just to be your best. And we talk about that a lot at Yogi Triathlete with the athletes that we work with and train with, is just to do your best and be your best. That can be enough. That can be enough, right? It doesn't have to be over and beyond. But I think it opens up the question of how far are we willing to go to be our best and merge our soul, like you were talking about, with one, like be able to go to that extreme. If it's extreme, I just think it's where you want to go. Like I want to get there quick. So more loving thoughts, less harmful thoughts. What do you want people to take away when they come and visit the farm? What would
Inspiration.
Inspiration?
Yeah. We just want them to be inspired to think about the world differently, right? Inspired to think about farmed animals differently, and or just be inspired to adopt this key value of ahimsa. And right, so that's really our goal, is to inspire people to expand their compassion, and as people do that, as they go into that journey, they'll eventually get to that point where they'll start eating plant-based, or start being more of a flexitarian and reduce. And because everybody's journey is their own. We don't have expectations of anybody who come in and say, well, tomorrow you have to be plant-based. Like, it's journeys are their own, and it's all complex. It's never simple. So we just want them to be inspired to do something, to do the next thing, that whatever it is in their journey.
Beautiful. I love that, because it is just about taking the next logical step, and sometimes it's huge. Like for you, it was signing a lease on, 20 or so acres. For somebody else, it might just be, opting for a garden burger, something like that. It is just about meeting yourself where you're at, taking that next step. That is the most logical, because it's all, you can't skip a step. It's all those little steps that bring you to where it is that you desire to be. And I think in our nature, we are good. We are good. Yeah. We are nonviolent in our nature. Shaleen, thank you so much for your time today. I so appreciate it. And I look forward to coming and visiting Loving Arms, hopefully in these next coming months.
No, thank you. This was such a pleasure. And I look forward to seeing you when you're here. And I will invite all of your listeners to also come and see us in Colorado.
Wonderful. I hope they take you up on that. Thanks so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day on the farm. And this has been a great pleasure. We appreciate it.
Thank you.